Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about how incredible the class design system in Pathfinder 2e is, and just a bit of how it was accomplished. While some classes absolutely do lack a little bit of versatility or power, every single class does feel incredibly different to play with and just have them be in your party. Without further ado, let's get to it. Generally speaking, the most obvious part of 2e's design that makes for good class design is the 3-action system. Rather than just having a standard action and a single move action, like in Pathfinder 1e and in D&D 5e, every PC in 2e has 3 actions that they can use however they like. Me just saying that the 3-action economy is good isn't all that revolutionary though. Basically, everyone who has ever touched it knows that it's good. What makes 2e's classes feel so different, though, is how they actually interact with that 3-action economy differently than other classes. For instance, take Barbarians and Rangers. For both classes, to use their class abilities to the fullest, they have to spend an action. For Barbarians, they have to Rage, and Rangers have to use Hunt Prey. It might seem at first glance that these classes must feel at least pretty similar to play, as they both have to spend an action to really get into things, but that can't be further from the truth. For Barbarians, raging in the wrong scenario can be a huge risk due to how it decreases your AC, but the bonuses that it gives are really huge, so playing a Barbarian ends up being kind of a game of figuring out whether or not it is safe to rage, and once you're raging, how to ensure that you don't die, which really sets up for an interesting sort of play style of obviously taking big risks, but also getting huge rewards. For a ranger, though, the risks of hunting prey are basically non-existent. However, because you do rely on targeting your hunted prey, it basically locks rangers down to targeting one enemy at a time if you want to use all of your abilities. So they feel differently because they are targeting a single character and really laser focusing in on one aspect of an encounter. Pretty much every single martial class has these sorts of decisions to make during combat. Does a monk want to do something this turn and actually, contribute in the combat in the present, or do they want to spend some time to get into one of their stances to set up for a future turn? Is it more important to get panache as a swashbuckler this turn or the next turn? All of these questions that you have to ask yourself are different for every single class, and it really makes every single class feel different and unique. Unfortunately, on the other hand, casters don't get nearly as many cool ways to play with the action economy, but it still is 100% possible. Meta magic feats, using skills, and even just one-action cantrips can really make spellcasters feel much more fluid than in other editions, because in other editions, you generally just cast one spell a turn and maybe move. But in Pathfinder, there are going to be turns where you just cast a 2-action spell then use 1 action to move, but there are more ways to play with it, which is still an upgrade in my mind, action economy wise. Another way that Pathfinder made classes infinitely more interesting is by separating class feats and class features. Every single class gets what they need to be a functional member of the party through their class features automatically, which allows for class feats to be a lot more interesting and situational. In Pathfinder 1e, there had to be an incredible amount of cool and favorable feats that no one ever took, because you were basically required to take certain feats to be an effective member of the party, which leads to a lot of builds ending up taking the exact same feats because, you don't want the PC to die. So everyone ended up taking power attack and weapon finesse and all that kind of garbage. But in 2e, it's set up to be very different. The 1e sort of playstyle is absolutely okay for certain types of game, but being able to grab all these fun, cool, and flavorful feats without suffering a huge decrease in power allows for some very fun characters and some very fun classes. Monk is a great example of this, as it is full of fun and situational feats that I would absolutely take, but if I had to decide between that cool, fun, flavorful feat and just a straight up bonus to damage, I would probably take the bonus to damage. Pathfinder 2e manages to give the both of 2 worlds by giving the necessary power upgrades automatically as part of your class, while also offering a bunch of fun flavor ideas. Also, class feats are vital for one simple reason, and that is replayability. You can build 6 different fighters that play completely differently from each other, and that's without touching on archetypes. Once you do add in archetypes, the possibilities are almost literally infinite for every single class in the game. That kind of flexibility is incredibly hard to create, especially since almost all of those combinations are going to actually be good, which is genuinely impressive. What this ultimately comes down to is that 2e's classes feel incredibly different from each other to actually play, and within each class, they can also feel vastly different from each other. You can have 2 different rogues in the party, and they can play very differently despite both being based around skills and sneak attack. That kind of versatility is hard to create. Like, that breadth of playstyle within classes is hard to develop, but Paizo has somehow managed to do it, and I understand bits of it, of how they managed to do it, but figuring out everything is still a bit hard. I'm not exactly a game designer. They've somehow managed to make a system where I genuinely want to play every single class multiple times, which is honestly the largest compliment I can give to a tabletop role-playing game system. Thanks for watching. This has been an interesting video to make, since I've only had about 6 hours to make it, so hopefully you've enjoyed it and the quality hasn't dropped at all. And also, I hope that I managed to make you think about your favorite class in a different way than before. Honestly, I don't think that there are any classes that are truly bad in 2e, though the Alchemist does need a couple of house rules to really get working correctly. Over time, I trust that the Witch will also get all the cool stuff it deserves, as that is the other class that stands out as needing a couple more class feats to really stand on its own. Also, if you're watching this the day that this video comes out, then I'm going to be live streaming at 7 PM EST tonight, as I go over all of the archetypes and rules options from Book of the Dead. I have not seen any of them so far, so it's going to be a blind reaction, and it should be fun. Check it out if you want. Regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.